Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video we are going to be covering what I have learned from defeating Floor 4 Bird and Deer over 100 times. To prove that I have done it, as it's quite easy to say I've done something when I haven't done it. We go to titles, we'll just set a limit for acquired and item storage. You can see that I have this title here, which is the Bird Destroyer, which is defeat Floor 4 Bird 100 times, and I also got the same one for the Deer, which is defeat Deer Floor 4 100 times. And I'm going with some stuff that, well, just general stuff that I've noticed, like, you know, where you're most likely to fail if you are going to fail, maybe some problems here and there, but most of the time it's just going to be going over stuff that I've learned, and just some tips and tricks I can really give you about it. So Bird Floor 4 is quite easy, it has been nerfed quite a bit. Phase 1, as long as you're using a team like mine here, you will end up killing it before it does the gimmick, which is like it disables your hand, and I think lowers your attack as well, which you can just cleanse with 3 single targets. Where's the phase 1? Here it is. On phase 2 of Bird is the place where you're most likely going to fail. And I know it's really unlikely you do fail here, but it has happened to me actually quite a few times, actually probably a lot more than I'd like to admit. And that is that you need to play 3 level 2 skills to gain the shield to stop yourself from dying from is it this skill here? Yeah, this skill here. This one here, which will just absolutely vaporize you. It basically disables everything but recovery skills. If you're not running Megelda, you will not be able to recover from it. If you do have Megelda, you can actually still win after being hit by this skill. As long as your team tanks it, you can still win from it. But that is quite a big problem. I also don't like the fact that it makes a sound. But yeah, Bird Floor 4 is one of those ones where it's okay. Especially this phase, you can get screwed over a little bit here. Bird Floor 3, the gimmick isn't too bad, you just got to play, it actually says, applies 8 immortality stacks on self at the start of the battle. Immortality is added or removed when taking damage from a skill with a certain effect during the enemy's turn. Increase all stats by 100% when immortality stacks reach 15. So the way they reach 15 is by playing certain skills. So playing Lolly Merlin's AoE Infect skill will increase the immortality stacks. I don't remember by how many. They probably nerfed how many you get from. I haven't actually played the AoE since the huge Bird nerf that basically destroyed this phase, because this phase initially used to have 10 stacks, and then they lowered it to 8 to make it more farmable, which was quite a while ago now. But once again, the skills you need to play are like Amplify, Power Strike, or Thor skills. Those are the ones that are going to lower it. It only lowers it by 1. It doesn't matter if it's, for example, like Thor's Ultimate also counts. That will still only lower it by 1. You can clear it in 3 turns, which is what I normally do. You just spam it out, but you can get really unlucky. For example, I'm running like Lolly Merlin, I've got Tyr. Both of them have skills that are not usable. Tyr's Rampage skill and Lolly Merlin's AoE Infect, which if I use will just screw me up even more. And also, I've got 3 non-usable ultimates. Shion's ultimate, which increases her basic stats by 50% and has no effect on it. You've got Lolly Merlin's ultimate, which I believe has like Spike, and then it's got the shield effect to it. And then you've got Tyr's, which is a Sever AoE ultimate. Once again, it's not going to trigger the effect, and you can get screwed up a little bit. Because what it does is every turn it will disable one type of skill, so it'll start with stances, then I'm pretty sure it's debuffs, then so on and so forth, and eventually it's like attack skills, then ultimates. And that is how you can get screwed over, is if you get super bad RNG, which has never actually happened to me yet, or if I've had really bad RNG, and bear in mind I've actually probably farmed Bird pretty closer to 200 times, because I've nearly upgraded every relic in the game to Bird at the moment. But yeah, this is one you can quite easily get screwed over. Floor 4, in my opinion, you can't get screwed over at all. As long as you know the gimmick, you remove the damage increase buffs, you will be completely fine, and that is because it's not too bad, especially using characters like Thor, or even like Lolly Merlin. She's so powerful. You know, the first buff it gets is when it gets to 75% max HP remaining. It will then get a defense rate stat boost to 50%. When you get it to 50% health, it gets a 25% HP related stat boost, and when you get it to 25% health, it gets a 25% attack related stat boost, which is, yeah, you can't really get screwed over. It does have a gimmick where if you get like X amount of a certain debuff, you get insta-killed. There is nothing you can do about that. Of course, if you're running characters like Tyr or Shion, you know, you can play X amount of single targets, and it will remove them if you're playing both of them at the same time. I'm pretty sure it removes both the amount. I'm pretty sure Shion's 2, and so is Tyr. So you actually remove 4 debuffs, and to have the insta-kill effect. I'm pretty sure you need 7, which is a lot of debuffs, but it can apply them quite quickly, especially with this. I think it's actually a passive apply. I don't think it is. Yeah, it's not a skill apply, it's a passive apply. There it is. Here it is here. So yeah, that revenge skill, and then when it gets to 7 stacks, you get insta-kill, and it also lowers your damage. But if you're running characters like Tyr and Xion, you can remove them very passively, so it's not too bad, and it's not really a problem. Once again, the team that I use is heavily based on single targets, because the characters on this team benefit from single targets. You know, Xion and Tyr both benefit from single targets. Thor does crazy single target damage, so it just makes sense to go with a more single target orientated team, apart from of course ultimates, but ultimates don't really matter, to be honest. Now on to Deer. So Deer Floor 4 is one that I've recently started farming a lot, solely for the fact of now Skull's out. I've actually got a decent team that works very well. I'm not really sure about using any other team. I've only solely used the team with Skull at the moment, because it is quite easy. But yeah, Floor 1 isn't too bad as long as you understand that the only way to get rid of the Grey Torrent effects is to have it play the free skill. This free skill here will guarantee remove the torrent effects, which is what you need. If not, they are permanent, which is really irritating, because losing, I think you get 2 stacks of it, so you lose like 40% of your remaining health every time you play a skill, or your max health every time you play a skill. Sorry, 10% max health, so you get 2 of them, so you lose 20% of your max health every time you play a skill, and that is permanent. Unless, of course, the free skill plays, then it removes it. Apart from that, it's not too bad. Of course, standard stuff. You have to use Ragnarok characters, because if not, they take 1,000% more damage, and they deal 1,000% less damage, which is not something you really want to deal with. Damage cap on Deer, it's really low. Every phase, it is extremely low damage cap. Of course, that is to make it slightly harder, and I guess to sort of encourage you to use Thor, once again, with death damage, meaning that she does, I don't know, an additional 0.5% more than the damage cap. So 25% damage cap actually becomes 37.5% damage cap, 30% becomes 45%, so it becomes actually quite easier as long as you're running certain characters. Also why Freya is also very good as well, because his ultimate is death damage with 100%, so you know, 25% damage cap becomes a 50% with his ultimate, which is really cool. Then on to Phase 2. Phase 2 isn't too bad. It's very much like characters like Skull really benefit from this, because it's got like 1,000% damage reduction for every attribute until you play 2, let's say you play 2 green, you remove the blue damage reduction, you play 2 red, you remove the green damage reduction, and you play 2 blue, you remove the red damage reduction. That's how that works. But a character like Skull, who has a minimum damage threshold, which is like 40% of the enemy's remaining health, she can do crazy damage turn 1. Let's just say you play 3 Skull skills turn 1, and then what you end up doing is getting its HP to, let's just say, below, I think damage cap on this is about 20% still, yeah. So you get it to like anywhere between 40 and like 60%, we'll say. It's like a safe bet, because of course the more health he loses, the less damage she's going to deal. And you pull additional 2 Thor skills, you've still got Thundergod from the previous phase, you can kill it in like 2 turns, and it's not actually too bad, and it can be quite easy sometimes. Of course, you can easily get quite screwed over. What I recommend doing is, if you're playing a ton of green skills and you have 2 red skills, don't wait for Thor skills, just play the 2 red skills and you remove the green damage reduction, and you can just wipe it with green skills. Also, it's quite good as well, because you can heal quite a bit with Tyr. Tyr doesn't have the best HP related stats, so being able to heal with Tyr is always a plus side, and I highly recommend it, of course, if you can. Phase 3 is extremely easy. You play 3 skills of the same attribute, you get a shield. Every other turn he plays this skill here, which will just insta-kill you. As you can see, it's got a lovely, very fair 20,000% multiplier. It will just one-shot you. It does about 1 million damage to my team. It equals it to 1 person. The way I like to do it is I'm always playing. So I'll play 3 green skills, let's say turn 1, or 3 blue, or 3 red, and then for the second turn, during that first turn, so of course you have to play 3 of the same attribute. If I have a counter with Skald, I'll play the Skald counter, because what that does is it actually sets up for the next phase, for the next turn. Because the stacks carry over. So the stacks are only removed when it goes onto its turn. So when it goes onto its turn, you can immediately start stacking. That means Skull's counter can already start stacking it for the next turn, which is pretty handy. That means you don't have to play. I don't think you have to actually play any skill, because if it attacks 3 times, it's already got 3 stacks. You play any skill of any attribute, and the shield reapplies, which would be pretty handy. I also like to use that phase to try and make sure I've got like 2 red and 2 blues, and nearly their ultimate. Let's say like 2 gauge of Freya's ult, 2 gauge of Thor's ult. So what that means is I can play those 2 skills that I've currently got in my hand, and then get their ultimate, and I also still get hand space to get more green skills. That's how I like to play it. It's how I sort of prepare for Phase 4, which is most likely the place where you are going to fail. I have not failed on phases 1 to 3 yet at all. I have failed on phase 4 quite a bit, because that's when, of course, RNG really hits you, and I'm not going to lie, skill goes out the window on phase 4, and it is solely RNG. Realistically, the boss does a lot of damage to itself due to corrosion. It applies a corrosion when you do the correct color wheel, so if you do the color wheel from, you know, let's say you do green, blue, red, which is what I do, you can do red, green, blue, or blue, red, green. It doesn't really matter what order you do it in. But when you do that order, it not only loses an immortality stack, which it has 3 of, but it also gains a corrosion stack. If you do remove all the immortality stacks and you can now deal damage to it, let's just say you've had really bad card RNG and you've not, not been able to get Freya's ult or something, and you can't deal big damage to it, which is what I like to use for big damage on this phase, you can just keep doing the color wheel and it will keep getting the corrosion stacks. The corrosion stacks can also kill it as well. They do also stack up to 2 times max. The corrosion is 10% max health, so you can kill it with it. So sometimes what I like to do is, even if I don't have the right attribute but I can still damage it quite a bit, I'll damage it to about 10% of its health, and of course it's most likely going to have corrosion on it from the previous turn, and it will die to the corrosion, which is pretty handy. That's sometimes how I like to kill things. The counter isn't too bad. Huge tip, any tier skill, if you have green tier, is a buff removal skill. So make sure you've got at least 2 of them. Solely because it's ultimate amplify. If you do not have, if it has buffs on itself, because what it does is this single target. Yeah, this single target here, if it pulls, let's say, the turn before it ults, it always will buff up, which is 3 buffs. That's even better. But yeah, he gives himself 3 buffs, and then what he can then do is then, let's say it plays this skill twice, which will give it an additional 4 buffs, so it's a 7 buffs. With its ultimate, it does a lot of damage and will wipe your team. That's the reason why tier is pretty handy. You play any tier skill, you save it for that turn, you can immediately remove it. When it comes to the counter isn't as scary as what it seems. You think, oh, 1500 damage is a lot, but it's got no effect on it, The deer itself doesn't actually have much attack, 28,000 attack. That isn't too much, especially if you're removing buffs every time. When it does play a counter, though, it does get attack-related stat boost, which once again, tier's going to be your best friend here. You remove the buff, and he's basically completely useless. Most of the time at that point, when it does play the counter, you can damage it with normal skills. As long as you've been doing the color wheel every single time, you'll be completely fine here. And then you can just kill it with the last few skills you need to. Apart from that, Deer is quite easy. Phases 1 to 3 are easy. Phase 4 is where you're most likely going to lose, and that's solely because of RNG. Skill sort of goes out the window. Yes, you can sort of, min-max pulling your sort of skills you need, like sort of what I said on the phase 3, how I like to make sure I got 2 red skills, 2 blue skills, and make sure that I am 2 ult gauge off their ultimates as well. So what that means is I play their 2 skills, and then I get their ultimates as well, and that means that I can finish it. Because you want to do about 3 rotations of the color wheel to remove the damage reduction for each 1 fixed damage, as well as for the corrosion stacks as well. Because the corrosion can be a carry sometimes, of course. The reason why I like to start with green is solely for the seeds that it applied, these things, because 300,000 health is a lot, especially when you're fixed to 1 damage. I know that the corrosion's like 400,000, but let's just say you start with blue, for example, the furthest away from red. You do blue, red, green. It's going to basically full heal every time you do that color wheel until you can start doing proper damage to it, which is the reason why I always advise you to start with green if you can, just because it makes the most sense when dealing with this, and it does make it quite a bit easier. But that's it. That is all my tips and just sort of stuff that I have learnt from farming these 2 tier 4 demonic beasts. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.